Hey guys, it's Mike from the Geek Pub.
And Connor, and today we're going to be showing you how to make a lowrider skateboard the right way.
So the first thing that we need to do in order to make our lowrider skateboard is to cut out the holes for the wheels. And I think the easiest way to do that is going to be to mount the trucks on the bottom or on the top upside down, and then use that to gather our measurements for cutting out the holes. So we're going to start with that. So we just mounted the trucks upside down using the original hardware, just using 2 screws diagonal from each other. Then we just used a section of scrap hardboard perpendicular to the board deck and flat against the wheels to mark the cutouts. And this worked pretty well. A speed square might make this easier. Okay, so now that we have the skateboard marked, we went back and did a little bit of figuring, and I believe that we need to move these lines over about 1/8 of an inch, and that is to keep the wheels from making contact with the board during movement. And we're going to do that with a straight edge. In addition, we need to mark back somewhere between 1 and 2 inches and draw a line for the inner cutout, and so we'll do that next.
I just drew the new lines 1/8 of an inch to the outside of the old ones using a metal rule, and I followed it up with the inside lines to complete the box.
I clamped the skateboard deck down to the top of my workbench and used a jigsaw to cut out the wheel slots. A bandsaw would definitely make this easier, but I wanted to use tools that I thought would be more commonly owned. We got a little chip out, so in hindsight, I would recommend using some masking tape over the board before cutting it to prevent that. I think it turned out pretty nice. Okay, so on Connor's original slammed skateboard, which he did a pretty good job on, there's one fatal flaw, and that is that the mounting hardware makes contact with the hangers, and they also bend as they go through the base plate. And so in order to solve that, we have another set of base plates which have a second hole in the front. You could add another plate on top if you didn't have these. And then what we're going to do is use a larger set of screws, and we're going to use this tubing to actually make the lift kit. And how long we cut this tubing will determine how high or how low the base plate is from the skateboard deck. And so the first thing we're going to do is drill out the base plates, and then we're going to cut the tubing. Because the suspension kit becomes basically a giant lever at 4 times the length of the original number 10 hardware, we're upping the screws to 1/4 inch versions. This requires the base plates to have slightly larger holes in them. The end result will be a much more rigid system, but it is optional. We set up the board on the bench with some temporary nuts, just to mock it up. This allows us to measure the perfect length for the spacers. Over on my other workbench, I put the 1/2 inch tubing into the vise, and then I transferred the measurements from the calipers. I then used my angle grinder to cut out 8 identical sections of tubing. Have I told you how much I love the angle grinder?
Assemble the risers by first installing a 1/4 inch flat washer on the bottom. This will prevent the tubing from sinking in the skateboard deck during use and tightening of the hardware. I also put cap nuts on top of the screws. They look nice and will make things a little safer. It rolls good and is fully functional.
Now it's time for a fantastic paint job. In Geek Pub yellow, of course. Okay, so let's talk about how our design is better than the one that you normally see on the internet.
So the major flaw with the normal design of the lowrider skateboard is that the hangers touch the deck, which gives you no steering at all. The way we fix that is that we use steel risers to make the base plate one with the deck, which gives you turning just as if it's a normal skateboard.
So let's try this thing out.